And welcome to Weekly Open. I'm Brian. We've got everybody here today. Happy to be here with you for Weekly Open. Don and Cred. Hello, and how you doing? Cred, you're on the left. How's it going, buddy?
Yeah, I'm doing well. We've got the conference indicator coming up for the market, which is far scarier than any TA or FA.
That's why we're going down. Miami is happening.
Every time I meme about it, I feel bad, but so does the market. So unfortunately, it's something you have to pay attention to.
Yeah, I forgot I was supposed to be there, but I had to cancel because one of my kids is playing so much baseball that we have to play like all week and all weekend. So I feel like, got to prioritize what's important. So I canceled.
Very wholesome. And also, you were embroiled in the whole Ledger controversy.
That's true.
You've had a busy week. Your PR department's on fire, basically.
That's a good point. I was, trying to create backdoor exposure mechanisms to take everyone's private keys as well. So, I better stay away from the conferences. My mentions did really go bananas yesterday.
Yeah. I can't believe Ledger would,
What's funny is how many people actually think I'm the same. But nevertheless, that's my.
Oh yeah, and then that's the lowest IQ comments anyway, right? Like the people that think you're the official page, they're not going to be the ones that you want to actually be talking or listening to.
Well,
what's the status of my Ledger? Let me check Ledger status.
The one benefit is the people that care about private keys tend to actually be a little bit smarter than people that don't. So, it's not as bad as you would think, but I still get a lot of mistakes in terms of who to blame. But mostly it's just for the memes in my mentions, so I don't mind it so much. All right. I'm tweeting this now so that people might show up. How's Don? How are you? I forgot to ask how you are. I asked ahead of the show and I got the true story. What would you like to tell the audience?
No, I'm good. It's just a little bit tired. Had a lot of things to do. But I'm back home, ready to go.
Okay. You made me look at the daily chart for the first time in quite a while. Daily chart looks bad. I don't like that. When I look at the weekly chart, I don't know. It seems like a bunch of nothing. Although, to Cred's point, when you have too much time to buy at the supposed level that's a buy, that's maybe a little bit concerning. Cred, do you want to give us a little bit of a take on the market?
Yeah, sure. I mean, as far as the weekly goes, I mean, I can screen share this, I think.
Yeah, I think
make sure
perfectly
it's the right
capable of
tab.
screen sharing. I won't put it on until you confirm for me. Don't worry.
This should be it, I think.
Okay.
So this isn't too messy. It's got my higher time frame stuff. And on the weekly, we had this dumb little box, which ended up being the top instead of pushing into the much more wholesome 32, 35K. We didn't get there and nicer. Turned around. Yeah, and that's why it's not. I didn't even make it thick. I made it thin out of disrespect, and the market still seemed to care. So that's where we got stuffed, and it made sense contextually because a lot of the meme coin stuff started happening there, and also the round number memes of 30K BTC, 2K ETH. It's like that kind of stuff does tend to work in crypto markets at the very least. And so we got there, and then since then the price. I mean, this is what we had, like meme coin mania, everyone scamming each other, and still continue to do so, sending millions of dollars for undefined pre-sales to US citizens and all sorts of malarkey that I don't enjoy on Twitter.com or in the industry. Nonetheless, I mean, as far as the weekly time frame is unfolding, you're not going to find any allies there for the time being because it got stuffed at that 30K resistance. And then since then, all it's done is just make a lower low close on the weekly time frame, and even thus far came in and retested the underside of that. So it looks, and this is a very technical term, it's a bit droopy. And isn't really giving, it's not even ranging anymore necessarily, because I think the range would have just held the highest close and the lowest close of the consolidation, right? That seems to be a fairly uncontroversial definition of what holding the range would be. And by those parameters, it's sort of making lower low closes rather than staying sideways. So it does look breakdown-y on the weekly. And the big levels are the thick ones So sort of 20 to 24 on the weekly, there's structure there. If it wants to go higher, which is looking less likely with the current weekly, is sort of 32, 35. It looks like we hit mediocre resistance, got mega frothy and started scamming each other, and now we're breaking down from the 5-6 week range that we had. If you wanted the best counter argument for that, which I don't think is totally persuasive with current price action, but something that should be on your radar as always, is that the market essentially came in and spiked all of these lows and didn't completely collapse. I do think we've already seen a decent chunk of that bounce play out, and it kind of got stuffed. Yeah, exactly. But if you wanted like copium analog type of arguments, it'd be something along these lines, where you have a weekly consolidation, a spike, and then a move higher. Weekly consolidation, spike, and I just don't think it's got the same chutzpah to it as the sort of as it did at lower prices. So the weekly just not good until it hits the thick boys, and the lower thick boys seem more likely than the higher thick boys. And as far as the daily goes, I think it presents that case quite well, because one of the arguments I was making around this kind of market structure point of view was, even if you're targeting sort of 21, 24 or whatever, you want to see how the market reacts. I think I've said this on Weekly Open as well, when it pokes around these lows, right, which hadn't been spiked at that time. And the market broke market structure, so sort of even daily market structure. This is your high, low, lower high, and then came in for a lower low and spike. You got a decent sort of mechanical bounce as a result of people who chose to sell here. Thank you for your service. But already we had a couple of up days and the best that those couple of up days could do is just retrace into the bottom of the daily range before getting smacked down again. So maybe this is peak FUD at the bottom. Sort of, we had the spike, and maybe this is the retest and it goes up and whatever. But at the moment, I think there's at least some chance that, which is a very helpful qualifier, some chance anywhere between 0 and 100, right? But that we've already had the spike of those lows, and the reaction was pretty lackluster, and we're back there already, which is something I generally don't like. So yeah, I think not amazing at the moment. We're far away from high time frame supports, and the low time frame stuff we have is kind of just printing weak bounce, bearish retest type of stuff. And you can get into other things like the Tether Bitcoin buying news got faded pretty much immediately.
Yeah.
And I also don't like that news in general. So yeah, I need to see something. At the very least, the first kind of case for optimism, I think on the weekly, it's going to take a lot of work at this point. I think on the daily, if you close above the sort of recent range low at 27.4K, then you could start to make an argument that, hey, this was the failed break portion, and we're back inside this range now, right, between sort of 30 and 27, and maybe we spend some time there. But at the moment, if you just kind of stop thinking 2, 3, 5, 10 steps ahead, it kind of just looks like a breakdown in the process. So until that's fixed, I'm not going to be terribly keen on this thing.
Mm-hmm. I understand and hear you on everything you just said. Don, do you have any general disagreements with what Cred analyzed for us so eloquently?
No, I think it's
only privately, never publicly.
No, I 100% agree. Like, I look at it, technically for me, we're coming from weekly resistance. We're getting smacked down by it, and until we hit weekly support, anything that I see, like, for me to flip like majorly bullish again on Bitcoin, I would have to see like strong evidence of something. And so far, the only strong evidence I've seen is that this market is shit. Like, there's a lot of evidence for it that you just don't want to be trading it right now. Besides like a few outliers, like there's some things, like you have some events that kind of make it tradable, but then you have to be quickly in and out. Like, whenever, for example, with a recent trade I took was Litecoin, I was just like pretty sure that the halving talk would come up again, and then I bought a bunch, and then it went up because the halving talk came up again. And today, like just not too long ago, I actually sold, just because.
This is why we waited until Wednesday so Don could appreciate his W on stream.
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty good. Like, the Litecoin trade went from 80 to 92. That's like a decent trade, but it's nothing crazy, right? And this kind of describes the market quite well, when I'm like happy about a trade that is just like a couple percent on an altcoin. Because this is just like, if you just look at this daily chart here that I'm sharing currently, I mean, Cred had it earlier too. Basically, we broke down the range that we had, and we retested it, and we're now going lower. I don't like the breakdown. It usually is quicker than this. And once we talk about ETH, you're gonna see the same picture where you have like a major structure fail, and then it doesn't do anything, but it also doesn't turn back bullish, right? It's not like we had a spike and then we had immediate action to the upside, which would have been bullish. But we also don't have a loss of support and then a complete collapse as we usually have when we lose big supports. Instead, we had like a loss of support and then shit price action. And whenever this is the case, it just means that we need to chop for a little longer before the market decides. But technically, this is a bearish retest, right? Just full on technicals for me anyway. We consolidated here on the left side, made a new high, broke down, made a lower high, broke that completely down, broke below the range, retested it. Like that's a clean retest. I don't like how slow this has been on the bearish side of things, but I don't really see a bullish argument, right? Because it just seems like no one's really interested. And like I said, the same is really true for ETH. Price action has just been garbage.
Yeah, I hear everything y'all are saying. I just feel like the results likely to be continued garbage price action that really doesn't overly satisfy anyone. Like getting mega bearish outside of, oh, thanks for the 2 or 3 or 5% whatever, like some small amount of victory seems reasonable. I still feel like, one Bitcoin feels cheap on the long-term sense of it. And could it go to 24K? Yes, I think you'll find some buyers there, though. You know what I mean? And from a trade perspective, I think that's absolutely fine. It's 8% down. So it just depends on your time frame. Like, is a 5, 7, 8% trade the type of trade that you want to take with the risk reward profile that you have, or do you have the capacity to trade that? And if you do, then go for it. I think it's great. If that doesn't make a big difference in terms of your long-term outlook, I don't think it's a great reason to just like exit all crypto markets and say see you later for some period of months and months. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying exit all crypto.
Yeah.
I'm saying like the technicals for me, like how I look at them, they're bearish. I don't necessarily I'm not owning much right now. But this can change quickly, right? For example, if this daily, like if we didn't have these last 2 shit days, and instead reclaimed the range,
it'd look a lot different all of a sudden.
Yeah, I would have probably bought some, or would have held on to my Litecoin position, right? Because at that point, this looks much, much better. The problem is that we had this setup, right? Like we had a setup where we broke down, we wicked quite low. So you could have made an argument like, hey, a bunch of people are trapped down here. And then you could have curled upwards and then that chart would have looked good. And the fact that we had that setup and we could have done it, but we didn't, just means that we're going to chop for quite a while or go down to me. But that could be completely wrong, honestly. I don't really care. The good thing is like when you sell high, right? Like I sold 30.1, 30.2, like around here, is that like worst comes to worst for me. This has a giga candle from down here to 28, 29K, and I just flat out rebuy what I sold, get the same or a little bit cheaper price. And I didn't have to sit through this shit price action that makes you want to bottom sell. So like that's kind of like the good in it, but price wise, like this is just garbage to me.
Would either of you say we're in any form of trending market, or?
No, I would say it's a peak trading range, really. Like it's just a big trading range. Like when you zoom out, I think basically this was the old trading range that we had, and I think this is gonna be the new one. 15 to 30K, maybe 15 to 35, anything in between there, I think is going to be quite a while. And then you're going to go sideways. If you come back in that trading range, which I think we will eventually, I think basically what's going to happen is you have this trading range up here, and we move down, we're going to go sideways, and we're going to move back up, and then we're going to be in the next bull market. So I think that's the bullish argument, and I think it's the more convincing one to me.
Yeah.
But I think it needs more time, and that means anything up to like from here to 20K, I wouldn't be too shocked if it went to 20K. But also, like, you still want to buy. Like, there's almost no price action here that wouldn't want to make me buy longer term. It's just, do I want to buy? Like, do I think that there's a chance, or is the chance high enough for me for 20K, or not? Basically, like, do I buy here and just YOLO the difference, right? Like, that's the question that I have to kind of answer myself. Like, do I mind missing out on a 26% cheaper buy, or do I just hit it here and kind of play with that? For me, it's really, really hard right now. Like, that's quite a tough thing to do, because one, you don't want to buy and it goes down 20%, but two, you don't want to just be sidelined if it comes back in the old range.
One of the things that I see from talking about market sentiment and what people are doing is you're seeing, I feel like I'm seeing more evidence of people trading on leverage, and sometimes high leverage, because they're getting frustrated with the range. So the way to feel something or do something is playing, 5 and 30-minute candle structures with 10 or 20x. No matter whether you're right or not, I feel like the market really wants to punish those participants in either direction. You're just like, it's the liquidity zone type of trading, like, where are people off sides and let's go hunt them. So it gets quite difficult. And then also the other angle that I see, I think more people are probably losing money than making money, is, Cred, as you mentioned, like the meme coin stuff. By the time people get in, they tend to be doing it wrong, and everyone understands it's a game of hot potato anyway. None of that seems like good reasons to try to trade those markets. So I do like the idea of how do you play the longer term trade. And I think if you're approaching it in that way, that's fine. I just really wouldn't want to be personally trying to chase meme coins or trading on high leverage. And I have seen evidence of a handful of people making good money doing it. It's not for me right now, because it just seems too hard, based on the way the market is acting currently. Do y'all think there are easy trades out there, or do you think most things are difficult?
I think it's quite hard. And I think in general, like, when most people are losing money, and that's quite obvious just from how the market moves and how people have been kind of acting on social media and everywhere else, you don't necessarily want to be trading too much, right? Like,
Yeah.
you want to be trading when everyone is making money. That makes much, much more sense, because then the chances are just in your favor, right? Like,
Yeah.
there's new money coming in. So
one example of that that's funny to me, because I know he's been doing pretty well recently. Gainsey is usually pretty good about talking about that, right? Like, saying this is way too hard right now, so I'll just wait until it's more obvious. But then you see evidence, in this case, him as one of the examples of people doing well, but it's still hard. Like, the one does not account for the 99. And I feel like right now there's probably 99 that are trying to do what Gainsey's doing on high leverage and losing at it, even though Gainsey's had a good month or whatever,
yeah. I mean, whenever I've been bored, I've been kind of punting a little bit on some leverage exchanges. And I've actually been doing really well too, but I don't think it's necessarily a market where most people would be doing well.
But
and
you're
it's-
just attending the casino with a portion of your portfolio.
Yes,
You're not
I mean, this
blowing.
is not like I'm throwing a lot of money at it, and I would never,
Yeah.
because the thing is, like, and it feels like that right now when the market is a little bit like in a deflation kind of period, where all the froth comes out and like the easy money goes, basically. I really think you shouldn't be like too aggressive, because
You
if you're
don't.
too aggressive, you have to get really, really lucky. And
Yeah.
if new money comes in, you don't have to be really lucky. You'd have to be unlucky to not hit. Basically, it's like playing in a casino when you know that, like, it's rigged against you, and then going to the same casino when they're like have been investigated and they have to clean up their act. It's
More,
a
there's
completely
got to be more
different
than that. The
ballgame.
games also have to be in your favor.
Yeah, but I
we
mean,
get that. We get that sometimes.
Yes, sometimes you get actually the games being in your favor, but I think for most people, actually, like I think for most people, trading just isn't like plus odds. Like they always have down odds, on average. But in crypto, you sometimes have periods of times where there's actually just like you just have to be there, and then you make like it's almost impossible not to make money, as long as you participate. But
if
those
you
times are
if you
not.
go broke during this time and then
Yes.
you can't play during that time, that's not great.
Yep.
Like that's you will feel very bad in 2 years if you look back and remember when you blew up your portfolio on 20x leverage during chop.
Yeah, 20x leverage buying Pepe. Like Jesus
I
Christ.
didn't even realize you could buy 20x PayPay, but I don't know why I wouldn't realize it. I guess there's many places where people can do many things. Craig, you haven't spoken for ages. What's on your mind?
I'm just enjoying the collective wisdom. Wouldn't want to tarnish it with my views, but
Craig's over
I
here
feel like
trading Pepe on 20x.
yeah, very specific, Don. As far as kind of market conditions and leverage, etc., I do also want to contextualize our comments that, like, bigger picture, they come from a position of privilege where we can sort of just step back and trade spot or trade swings or not do anything and still be fine. For a lot of traders, especially people who enter crypto, that's kind of not a functional option. And even if it were, it may not necessarily be the best choice because you just need to trade to get samples and to get better and to figure out what kind of conditions work for you and to journal and to get a system and so on and so forth. So there probably is a middle ground where it's not like, okay, unless the market is really easy, just never trade. And then when it is very easy, just like trade a lot and then do anything in between. I think a lot of systems can and should be able to sort of be cognizant that conditions aren't as great as before and also just adjust accordingly. Maybe you size down, maybe you reduce your trade frequency, maybe you only trade specific types of assets or you reduce your holding periods or something. But there's probably a reasonable middle ground where you still participate on the high EV stuff in your system and still are able to iterate on that, as opposed to have the luxury of just throwing your hands up and saying, "Oh well, there's no free money on the floor, so fuck this." So I guess this is a sort of ode to degens and just sort of newer traders still trying to sharpen their blade. There's almost certainly something there as long as you don't blow up, and
I think
not,
that's
not everyone has the luxury of just kind of saying, "Oh, fuck this,"
Totally fair. I just would hesitate putting it all on the line if you've spent a long time building out whatever you've got.
No, of course. But at that point, like, it doesn't matter what the market conditions are. If your frame of mind is that you go all in, you're probably going to lose regardless of market conditions. I feel like catering to that as the baseline isn't like a useful thought experiment, because that person's going to lose their money anyway, right? Regardless of super up, super down, super sideways. If the advice is going to be, if you're going to go all in, don't trade, that applies to all market conditions, not just the choppy ones, right?
I agree with that.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. I have certain times where I feel more comfortable going all in.
But you go, like, the thing is with your all in, it's different than other all ins, right? Like,
Yes.
you don't go all in with your entire portfolio and then put 10x leverage on it.
That's a good point. My all in is basically unlevered. So
yes, I mean, if you go all in unlevered, I think even at this point, right? Like, I would argue that if you don't put leverage on it, in 5 years you're gonna be quite happy having bought. It's just
whether the price is 20,000 or 28,000.
Yes, exactly. Like, that doesn't really matter too much. But the problem is, and I mean, I think everyone in this market can attest to that. Like, we're all just a little bit of like apes inside. So like, people tend to kind of be like,
inside?
like, imagine if I took this trade with 10x leverage instead, and that's kind of that's what people fuck like that. What's getting people fucked, and I think that's what was Cred talking about. Like, that
makes a lot of sense. Can I show you all
trading
something?
addiction is also very real, right?
Yes.
Like, it's sort of, we tacitly acknowledge it, but it's also worth explicitly saying from time to time that a lot of people don't see trading as a job or as like a system or something they need to optimize. It's just a thinly veiled addiction to specific outcomes or being in certain positions with enough money on the line, or exposing themselves to the potential to make a lot of money, even if it's not plus EV. It's like genuine trading addiction that it's become so ingrained that it's an alternate form of gambling, and so anything that mitigates that is probably a good thing.
That's a very fair
it's a huge
point.
part of our market.
Very
like
fair.
most people.
Yeah.
I think a majority are probably, or at least a very large part, are straight up trading addicted, but realize that there's a stigma associated with that, and you don't sound very professional or intelligent. So then you sort of post facto rationalize. They're like, oh, this is my system, and this is my edge, and this is my stop loss, yada yada yada. But in reality, if you had to build the system from the ground up, it wouldn't be spitting out any of the trades you're taking. You're taking bad trades because you're trade addicted, and then you're rationalizing them after the fact with a system that wasn't there in the first place, just enough to sort of get you along to the next trade. At least that's a behavior I've seen quite a lot.
Yeah. No, I think that makes a lot of sense and is a good point. I think I'm the least, I would say, for ever since I got into crypto 2017, I've been price addicted. And now oh, wow, look at that. Over 6 years later. Ew. I'm I think I'm like the least price addicted that I've ever been. And then in addition to that, uh, kind of naturally turns into less trade addicted, because if you're not looking at prices much, you're less willing to trade, basically. So maybe I'm just on the other side of it, of that type of addiction finally. Um, for better or worse, like it might also mean that I end up late to whatever the appropriate trend is when it occurs. Um, but yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think that's well said, Craig.
Yeah. Now we look at this abomination of a charter.
Oh yeah, I have something really random to show y'all. Can I just show you before
Of
we
course.
do ETH? Just as a symbol of how crazy the AI narrative is right now, this is like one of the only charts in the world that's a tech stock and basically at all time highs. Nvidia has absolutely gone to infinity. And I think this is just an example of like how strong some of these narratives can become. When you see like a completely uncorrelated move like that in a gigantic asset. I just found that super fascinating. That to me, this signals a like massive shift in economies and like sectors. And I think that it would not surprise me if the whole AI side of things lasts way longer than we anticipate.
I think it'll last forever.
Yeah. Anyway.
I mean, that's going to be like a topic I think that we're going to talk about in 20 years still, in 40
Yeah.
years.
But I just mean from an investable sector perspective.
Yes.
Legitimately might be early.
Yeah. I think it is. Like, the question is, how do you invest, right? And I think that's a really good player, actually. An Nvidia player I really like. Obviously already up like 3x. So that's
that's what my my baby Robinhood account was in early in the year. I sold too soon.
Yeah, I mean,
You're earlier to AI than you are to crypto if you're listening to this, most likely. That's probably a hot take or something.
That is a hot take, but it's completely obvious.
Yes,
yeah. I had a hotter one. Another show I did with Don, I basically said, over a sort of 4 to 8 year time horizon, you'll probably make more money buying spot BTC ETH and then just going all in on AI, which will have its own bubble and go through all that kind of stuff. But then you enjoy the upside of spot BTC ETH, and then you're also much earlier to another tech bubble.
My question is, how do you get exposure to AI, like public market exposure?
Get a job.
Yes.
Like get a job. That's what I was thinking. You buy BTCs,
Yeah.
like BTC and ETH spot, and then you like get a job, and you sort of play around with all the tools available, the extensions, build something of your own, build up. Because you have to realize that this shit is so new that the threshold for what qualifies as like a reasonable CV or resume to have an interest in the space is like super low at the moment, because there's no like the baseline technical proficiency is like on the bloody floor. And if you're like an invested enthusiast, even if you don't have super technical background, or you can sort of self-teach or do whatever, you can probably find someone, something, somewhere working in that field, and then you sort of work up from there. So spot BTC ETH plus go all in on the AI bubble professionally and be able to survive the vol, I think is a good 4 to 8 year play, which is why I won't be doing it and will continue to lose money on perps.
I love that take. I really love that take, because investing in AI, like there's really not access to public market liquidity that's not a stock. And the stock, by the time it becomes a stock, it's always a lot scarier, because companies are so late to IPO now. Like you don't have early IPOs anymore, so your access as retail is limited, and therefore your return profile is probably limited as well in a publicly traded exchange. Yet, if you go to say, okay, well, let's do AI within crypto, like it seems much less likely to be real. So, like the get a job path to AI exposure is pretty funny and quite good, I think.
Yeah, especially if you're like in the tech sector, right? Like if you
Yeah.
know how to code, if you kind of like, I mean, it's a good overlap, I guess, because a lot of crypto people do know quite a bit, and like in the tech industry, in the IT industry. So I think it's like some of the best advice I've heard in the last few months.
Nice. All right. You want to talk about this ETH chart? I don't
Some of
know
the
where
best
your mind's at.
non-financial, non-employment, non-legal advice. Obviously,
Are you not
It's
allowed to
obvious.
make career advice without those?
I'm gonna
disclosures?
assume not.
Okay.
Yeah, career advice from someone who's just been hunting crypto for 6 years. You know, grain of salt,
Somebody who
I
hasn't
think, is-
had a full-time job and
Yeah, exactly.
yeah. All right.
Do I want to talk about this? No. Should we talk about it? Yes. I mean,
Your
it's a false.
your lines offend me. I'm just gonna say.
Yeah, I mean, it's not my fault. Go to Vitalik and complain with him.
No, just put a bigger box on it. Look, there's the
no-
bigger box. It's not
no,
that
no,
hard.
this is-
Perfectly within support.
I actually have that box on some of my charts, but I like this line better.
Oh yeah, because you don't own ETH.
Yes. Yep. I sold my ETH at 2K, so I didn't get the top. But I got like reasonably close. And for me, this is a false breakout, right? Like this is a false breakout, and we went below. But the same, like earlier when I was talking about Bitcoin, I was like, oh, this breakdown kind of sucks. It's not fast enough. Cred said the same thing, really. The same applies here, right? Like we had this false breakout. These usually go fast if you just look in like past instances of it. Like we had a false breakout here, a little bit of a couple of weeks of false breakout, but still. And then the moment we broke down, this just teleported down, right? This hasn't kind of done that yet, and it's not been super clean, but it's still a false breakout, and I still think it makes sense to be bearish this until we reclaim like 1.9, maybe 2K, like above 2K, close above 2K on the weekly, and ETH starts looking much, much better. Right now, kind of looks like shit to me. And target obviously is 1.5K, but at that point, what we're gonna do, and what like if this actually plays out as the setup would suggest, we would probably bounce from 1.5 and then put this head and shoulders in, and that would not look good. And then
It's Peter Brandt's last Head and Shoulders. There's always a time for that joke, and I enjoy it every time. Sorry.
I mean, at some point it's gonna be the last one, and then you cannot make it again.
That's
dark.
Anyway,
Stop.
if that plays out, and if Bitcoin plays out bearishly, as in if Bitcoin goes to 20K, I could see ETH go back to 1. And I would buy 1K again. Like I bought a couple times now. I bought it down here. I bought it up here. I would buy it again. I said the last time we were trading at 1K, this is going to be the last time I'm going to buy ETH at 1K. But I'll take that back. If we go back to 1K, I'm going to buy it. But it doesn't have to happen, obviously. And my invalidation is basically price going back above where I exited it. So I'm quite chill on this. But I mean, I like the ETH narrative. I'm just a little bit confused why price action is so shit when we have such a strong narrative. And that makes me a little bit hesitant on it all. And I think that's a good sign. Like it's a bad sign for all of crypto when you have strong narratives being faded like this. That's my take.
I think I still disagree with you. All my bullish ETH and bullish BTC arguments, I still stand by. But I think ETH will be just fine. If you paid attention to the ETH BTC pair, it's more cursed than ever.
Oh yeah, I mean the ETH BTC pair is just walking down.
No, it's not. Come on.
I mean, you cannot argue that this is not walking down. Look, this is the high.
What
this
time
the
frame
high,
have
this is the
you?
high. This is the weekly.
Yeah.
This like, and then where do you want to go?
To 0.14 where it belongs.
But for me,
listen. I'm just saying the squiggle has not been invalidated yet. It has not been invalidated yet. we're just spinning a little longer than expected in the fake out to the downside.
Yeah, it'll all come back.
Yeah. Look at my magnet. I keep having to move it. Just scoot it to the right a little further.
No, I think it's gonna hit this trend line eventually, and then we're gonna go up.
Hold on, the chat needs to see your trend line.
This trend line.
Oh, jeez.
So wherever that is, maybe we go sideways for 3 years. Maybe we dump. I don't know. We'll see. But I think it's gonna hit that trend line and then go up. But
I can't even make this trend line work on my chart. Oh, you don't touch that.
Yeah, and
you just have the 2 touch points, really.
No, I mean I have quite a few touch points. It's log. I don't know if you have log on, but yeah, there's one, here's one, and here's one.
Cutting edge stuff here.
Yeah, the trend line magic. But at the end of the day,
specific segments are why people hate TA and think it's so dumb. It's like, how do you get the trend line? Oh no, how many touches? Just draw it this way. Log, linear. Like,
I found it now. I had to go back to 2016 or whatever his first one.
I mean, if Plan B can change his models more times than I've had hot dinners, then we can certainly change the trend line or 2 and not lose all intellectual credibility. You know, that seems fair.
I think if you ignore everything besides the range, right? Like at the end of the day, it's a range, and I don't really think it makes much sense. Like you can trade the range boundaries, as in like anytime we get close to like 0.062, like down here, you buy, and every time you go to 0.07 something, you sell. But for me, this range is not that interesting. I'd rather buy above it or below it, really. And below it would be quite nice. Like if this rolls over, I think that'd be like a nice kind of like setup to play. But I don't know. I don't really care. Like I don't have a boat in the race. No, that's not what you say. But I don't have.
But I do have a big castle.
But yeah, I mean, for me, I think this is one of the more boring trades. But then again, when you compare ETH to any other altcoin, right? Almost any other altcoin, it's been outperforming massively because the other altcoins have been just completely tanking versus Bitcoin. ETH BTC has just been in a range since 2021, whereas other altcoins are down 80-90%. So I think ETH's gonna be. Everyone will see ETH as the obvious play, and I think very little people are actually going to take advantage of it because they're going to be like, oh, I could buy ETH, but I'm going to buy this and that shitcoin because it's going to outperform ETH, and then they're going to sit there seeing ETH outperform. So I think like if you want to buy an altcoin, ETH is probably the wisest choice from like a risk to reward setup and from a relative strength setup too. But right now it's not interesting to me.
Remember we talked about this potential capitulation of other alts relative to ETH, and then you talk about the weakness of ETH. We did this a few weeks ago, and I drew this Aave capitulation after those lows, and man, it's just walked right down. And I'm just using Aave as an example. Like it's basically everything. The hesitancy of owning these on a relative basis is strong. My hesitancy is strong. Maybe this will wash out and have some upside, but when they're flat, completely flat or down like this, and then if we have weakness in ETH, and even if we have strength in ETH, I think those still stay sideways. It's just I still have a really hard time getting excited about other alts unless it's like today's flavor, like you're early to Pepe type stuff. But if you're not early, then those seem like a waste of time too. Yes. But the old alts and whatnot, the ones I actually love fundamentally,
like Litecoin,
seem very difficult. No, the ones I actually love fundamentally, I don't think you heard that part.
We're just in a very cynical market. Like we don't even have sectoral rotations, or we don't even have singles. We don't even have like baskets of coins that do well. There's really nothing going on as far as trends, inflows, or the market really focusing on one thing over another. It's still very sort of mercenary, one-off, uncorrelated, unrelated at all, and very short-term type of rotations. And even the new shiny stuff recently has been getting battered. Your Optimisms and your Arbitrums and your Suis to some extent. Pepe, we saw Aptos. Like there's no longevity in the altcoin market at the moment, and no trends either. At least not to the upside.
All I know is I should have gone all in on a short of Aptos back when I talked about that, and because
True, that's still printing.
It's absolutely printing, and it's like if you don't hit that flavor of the week type of thing, then I don't know. There's nothing really there for you.
No,
we lost the line.
No, I think I still have it somewhere. Just I need to find
not on that pair.
No.
It was up there
on Binance.
Yeah.
I'll find it again. I have it somewhere.
But I think it's down. It's down over 50% from where you had plenty of time to get in, like $18 or so.
Yeah.
And this is not to say anything about Aptos, the tech. Like I have no idea. It's just the state of the market. Like it's just kind of gross to be in that and to be in many things.
Yeah.
How do you explain DeFi Summer 2020? The timing was right. Like the appetite for it was strong. It was when ETH was strong. A narrative was new of like, hey, this DeFi thing is serious, and here's the tools that make it possible to participate. And a bunch of people flooded into it. And it was also a narrative that brought liquidity for years beyond that. Like it was a true change in crypto markets. That's why DeFi Summer was so strong. And then ETH itself did very well. And then Bitcoin tripled in price after that. And then all of those alts ran for a year after that, taking the massive inflows into all of that excitement. That's what a cycle is. So it was early cycle, true fundamental change in markets. And we have not seen that. We're not seeing fundamental change in markets from Pepe and bin.eth or whatever that thing is. It seems like a scam as far as I've seen, but I could be wrong. I don't know.
Oh, I mean, most likely, allegedly. It's still great. Litecoin versus ETH, still great.
Charlie Lee is soon going to announce that he's been reaccumulating his Litecoin position.
I mean, I actually like the Litecoin play just because of the halving, but it got a little bit too hot for me. In the last, like today, basically, I was like, okay, it's too much. But I could see myself regret this because the chart kind of does look nice. This is actually. Like I took the trade basically down here at 80. I was looking at this shitty trend line. I was like, maybe we're gonna make a higher low here, and we did. And the thing is, like when you look at this chart, it's actually quite a pretty chart because this is gonna be the third time where it pushes into the mid 90 region. And at that point, I don't think I would want to fade it, especially given it makes higher lows over and over and over again. Like it's kind of walking up. So I do like it, but it's a shitty market right now. It's the only reason. Like if the market wasn't so shitty, I would keep this.
Yeah, I do like your trade setup as well. Yeah. One other funny thing that so I'm not picking on only Aave, the Wi-Fi to ETH ratio is at 4. It's CZ's favorite number. This topped in DeFi Summer at over 101, maybe 110. So you could love Wi-Fi, and if you bought the top, you're still down 97% on a relative basis to Ethereum. So just keep that in mind.
And that's quite wild. Like the way ETH went through this altcoin bear market is quite insane, honestly, because usually when you have Bitcoin retracing, when you have Bitcoin going down, whatever, the ratio of ETH like collapses and the ratio of altcoins collapses. And we've had this across the board, just not for ETH, which is very, very impressive to me, which makes it a really good bull market kind of play. I don't think it's going to be like Link, which had like this strength in the bear market where it was pushing while everything else was dying, and then just didn't do anything in the bull market. I think with ETH, it's going to be more like it has strength in the bear market, and then it's going to show more strength in the bull market.
I do kind of like your Dino Coin narrative. They're the least likely to get like legislative problems They've been
Yes.
around for forever. They're not Pepe rugs. The JPEGs have struggled. Like, it's one of the cleanest alt narratives if you're going to really try to come up with one. Now, I don't
Yes.
know what you say they're used for, but I don't know that matters.
No, it never matters.
Yeah, maybe a Dino Coin narrative is the one that we can leave folks with. I have a meeting in 5 minutes, so we can maybe wrap it up. Is there any like dollar legacy market type stuff that we want to pile in on with here? What's Jerome's calendar look like, Cred?
I actually haven't checked and have absolutely no idea. I do know a lot of the legacy guys have been complaining about the S&P chop for very understandable reasons. Because I mean, this
that's
is
all
what
it's
real
done.
chop looks like.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look at this on the 4 hour or even on the daily. I mean, what is this? That this is like pretty abominable as far as price action goes. So this is also sort of raises a personal qualm that I have, where people call chop in crypto like prices bleed down and people call it chop, which is very strange because it's
This
not
is
chop.
actual
Chop is like
sideways.
yeah. Chop is when you check the price and it's the same no matter what. It doesn't count as chop if you bought at 30 and it's at 25 and you're like, oh, it's still a bit choppy, isn't it? It's like, well, I'm not sure. Perhaps bigger picture it is, but then you fall into weird logical traps of calling everything a range, even if it 2x's and stuff like that, which I don't think is super helpful either. So as far as legacy goes, it's not great that we've had crypto weakness among a sort of S&P apathy. That's not like a clear correlation trade, but if this thing starts to go lower, that might hurt us. But I'm not aware of any particularly calendar sensitive stuff personally. And I think the correlation trades are kind of dead, or at least have been for a while. I think the legacy reaction to news, FOMC, CPI stuff, we've seen a reduced market impact on that for the time being. So unless we start getting some crazy beats or getting prints that are significantly outside of predictions, it's probably going to be a bit just more helpful to look at crypto charts because they've been pretty self-sufficient for the time being.
Bed Bath and Beyond is also chopping.
Oh, this is so choppy. When is it going to move?
Just on the chopping block,
Yeah.
8 cents bankruptcy, I guess imminent. I don't even know why it's trading still. Yeah, I don't.
Yeah, there's debt ceiling stuff, as Matt said in the chat. So some chatter there, but
they always try to create news, even if there's not any.
right.
But
yeah,
we don't have any, so we'll wait until something trends or breaks down so Don and Cred can get excited, and we'll go from there. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate it, everybody. Hope you have a great week. Thanks for joining us on a Wednesday. I know it's a little different than normal, but here we are. We'll try to see you back here next Monday, and have a good one. Like and subscribe, etc. Later.